3 weeks. We spent 3 godforsaken weeks marching up and down this pox island and we still haven't found them. This island is the size of our capital, but there hasn't been a single sighting of these bloody outlaws. Well, sir, we kind of lost the element of surprise and gave them the chance to hide when we spent 3 days disembarking our men in that cove. Wouldn't it be better to just sail right into the port? It probably would, but Bobrovsky disagreed. There were some ships there, and he claimed sailing into port defended by both coastal batteries and anchored ships would be a suicide. But there were only few of them. Surely our fleet would be able to turn them into driftwood with a few broadsides. Perhaps, but that's what Admiral said, and I'm not going to argue with his decision. I may be in charge of this operation, but I'm not going to pretend I know anything about naval warfare, so I'm going to trust Admiral's judgment on sea just as I would expect him to follow my orders on land. And besides, antagonizing the man whose ships are bringing in our supplies just doesn't seem like a good idea. Sure, we could spend hours discussing that, but what's done is done. We have our job right in front of us, so let's focus on it. And speaking of which, how are we doing? Surprisingly good, sir. Now that more of our officers learned how to speak Dutch, we were able to form a scouting vanguard of the native companies from Curacao, and so far they've managed to foil every ambush those pirates had set up for us. Also, there is this doctor who arrived from Sweden with the last batch of reinforcements, and he seems to know what he's doing. At first, the men were complaining because he harassed them to boil their water before drinking and ordered regular everyday baths for the companies, but it seems to be working. There has been no report of malaria or dysentery so far. Well, not too many at least. So I've heard. No wonder the men are eager to march on despite this horrid weather. I have no idea how can anyone live here, let alone fight or walk. As for the doctor, if he can really stop the diseases from spreading among our men just by cleaning our soldiers, then he deserves his weight in gold. Nothing erodes morale faster than losing half a company to sickness. Ah, there's a signal from the scouts. Colonel, ride back to the main column and tell the men to prepare for combat. It seems our pirate friends got tired of running. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Crownless Eagle. In the last episode, our war with Russia finally came to an end, and after 4 years of conflict, our people can at last enjoy some peace. And with said peace came enormous amounts of money, which the Assembly immediately used to expand their lands. One of said expansions was the island of Curacao on the Caribbean, where our 2nd Eastern Army was sent to secure the trade routes by eliminating the pirates that infested the Windward Islands. After some troubles, we've managed to take first pirate island, Trinidad, and now a couple months later our forces under General Lichorobiec are once again ready to bring another island under our control. But our men have learned their lesson, and this time, instead of chasing enemies all over the place, we're going to give them one decisive battle. Now, when this fight began, I had no idea what to expect from these pirates. They outnumber us, but their units are disorganized mobs, their morale slightly lower than that of our line infantry. They're not good at prolonged melees as well, as they have low melee defense, but they compensate for that with very high melee attack. This, of course, makes sense. Pirates are, after all, opportunistic criminals, so they're not used to longer engagements, and instead prefer to overwhelm their victims with swift, brutal attacks, and if the enemy starts to fight back too hard, they would just retreat and look for easier prey. That said, our advance must have really put their back against the wall, because it's completely unheard of to have this many pirates in one place working towards the same goal. So I was genuinely interested to see what they could do. Now, the battle started in a standard manner. The enemies advanced towards our lines, baited by our artillery advantage, and at the same time our men marched forward as well, under covering fire of our cannons. The plan here was to take the most advantageous position on the field. On our right flank we marched towards a small hill that should give us perfect elevated position to fire at the pirates, and on the left I wanted to hide my soldiers in the cover of a stone wall, but as you can see this was one of those mystical one-way cover-only walls, because despite all my efforts it was absolutely impossible to place my men in cover on our side. So, our infantrymen, terrified that elder ones would devour their souls if they crouch on the wrong side of the wall, will just have to stand there. The wall will still provide them with some cover, but it won't be as effective. Still, it's a small price to pay for keeping the gates to the netherworld closed. Soon the main battle had begun, and I used the confusion to sneak my cavalry around enemy army. But some pirate captains had the very same idea, and so our light dragoons met some sword-armed corsairs right at the edge of the town. I gave dragoons charge order, but unfortunately the terrain and buildings were aligned in such a way that most of our men arrived in a column formation, and so our charge had very little impact. And that means that now our missile cavalry will have to fight in melee against a unit that specializes in just that, and as you can see here our dragoons have very little success in this brawl. I'm already moving some Uwans there to support them, but right now I have to focus my attention on the main event. And it's a weird one. As you can see, instead of going for a melee charge I expected, pirate mobs just engage us in a line battle. I was surprised to see that because I completely forgot that, aside from their swords, they are also armed with pistols. Pistols that apparently come from Warhammer universe where you don't have to reload them and just have to wait a few seconds before firing again. Anyway, enemy units ran towards us, stopped at a very close distance and began regular firefight. And that decision will prove to be catastrophic for them, for many reasons. One, even though the flintlock pistol is a smaller weapon, it still takes a long time to reload. 2, even at such a small range, pistols are extremely inaccurate. They may be useful in close quarters during shipboarding, but in the open field battle they will be almost useless. And 3, despite pirate numbers, their units are very poorly organized, firing without much coordination, and all that means that our better disciplined and drilled line infantry will be able to put more accurate fire down range much faster than their foes, which will work to our advantage. Now I thought that pirates would just give us 1 or 2 volleys to disrupt our lines and go for a melee charge. As you can see, they almost reached our lines, but stopped just a few meters away, engaging in another one of those weird close-range fights that are far less bloody than they should be, but instead of charging they seemed committed to continue firing. Not the best idea, but then again we're fighting sea bandits, so perhaps expecting some brilliant strategies is slightly out of place. And back on the other side of town, our Uwans have just arrived to help out our light dragoons, and now they will have a field day just hacking through those pirates who, despite being strong in melee, are not really equipped to deal with cavalry. Overall, we had a good, if unusual, start of this battle. And it didn't take long for the bandits to realize that this battle is not their standard fare, where they board some merchant ship full of terrified civilians, and as volleys from our lines cut them down, more and more pirates turn around to flee. Some of them will pull back a bit and try again, but the vast majority will just give up completely, preferring to disappear before the battle is over. And as their comrades realize that, some of them finally pushed into melee, if only to stop us from firing. But as you can see here, our infantrymen are not impressed in the slightest, and counter enemy attack in their usual way. First rank keeps enemies at bay, while second and third continue firing at point-blank range. Now, while this is impressive, it is also, as far as I can tell, completely random. You see, normally when even a single enemy soldiers get into melee range, the entire unit will stop shooting instantly to go for a brawl, but sometimes only a few soldiers will start fighting, while the others will continue firing as if nothing happened. I think it might have something to do with guard mode, but since it's, as I mentioned, mostly random, you can't really plan it. Still, it's always nice and impressive to see it when it happens, and even better when it's our side that pulls this off. Now, the pirates had a unit of an actual musket-armed infantry, and so I thought they might use it to form some sort of a centerpiece of their line, but as you can see they just marched them right into our faces with the rest of their mobs, and even then they had troubles to use them properly. And as they were shot down by our relentless volleys, few meters behind them another unit of buccaneers were performing an interpretive dance. I have no idea what happens here, but this battle has just kinda turned into a farce at this point. I even ordered my men to stop firing for a while just to give those pirates even a slightest chance, because the only thing they've managed to do up till now was to die en masse. You were able to see that there are hundreds of bodies lying on the ground near the town in a bloody, horrifying display of military incompetence. So our men will use this moment of peace to do what they like to do and just shout at our enemies to give up, but there is no response, only this silent, synchronized dance that looks more scary the longer our men look at it. Finally, line captains decide they've given these madmen enough chances to surrender and give order to open fire again, and hearing that immediately sends the pirates running, even though they are not broken. Their musket-armed friends will run forward and try to form a firing line, but at this distance, with so many of our troops preparing to fire, they give up almost instantly. Our lines will give them a few parting volleys to make sure they won't come back, but I really don't think there's anything to worry about. Overall, I think my men are just as bewildered as I am. Still, the fight is not over, and now we have to deal with enemy unit that actually causes us the most damage during this battle, mortar teams. They're protected by an insane amount of anti-cav spikes, but only from the front, so our dragoons, the colonial ones, were able to attack them from behind. And it wasn't actually an attack, I've just ordered these cavalrymen to ride right on top of enemies' heads and stop right before the spikes, because if I had ordered a regular charge, then the impact would have carried many of my men right into sharp wooden death, and that way this should not be an issue. But as the gun crews broke off, some of my guys got so distracted that they ran into traps anyway. I immediately ordered them to ride back, but unfortunately 2 of them have decided to commit suicide and impale themselves anyway. It looks like it is our destiny to always lose at least some men to inanimate wooden objects. but it doesn't matter, because this fight is over. Seeing the mountain of corpses left by their first attack, second wave of pirates just give up before even reaching us, and just like that we are victorious. We've learned much from the hard lesson on Trinidad, and now this experience is paying off. Martinique is ours, only one island to go. Alright, here we are at the results screen, and as you can see only one of our units took considerable damage, but other than that we should actually be able to just continue our attack. We won't do that though. There may be only one pirate island left, but that means they're going to be fighting us with their back against the wall, and that is always dangerous. More than that, there's still some things to take care of on Martinique. It seems that some pirate captains were so sure of their comrades' victory that they actually remained anchored in port, so now we have an opportunity to block them there with Bobrovsky's fleet. And now as they're trapped there, we can send our land units to storm the port itself, giving pirates a choice. They can either fight our men on land and die, or try to break through the blockade and sail for the open waters, because with just 4 ships they stand no chance against our fleet. So when they saw our general approaching the port with 2 untouched companies of infantry, they decided to make a run for it. But Admiral Bobrovsky was expecting that, and his ships were ready to strike at pirates as soon as they left port, and as expected we encountered no troubles there. 3 enemy vessels were sunk almost immediately, and the last one, the awesomely named brig Amethyst Barracuda, has surrendered. And Bobrovsky liked the name so much he actually decided to add this ship to his fleet. It's not as formidable as his 4th raids, but it's much faster and more maneuverable, so perhaps he's going to use it as a scout or a runner. No matter its intended role, it's going to be pretty much a fleet mascot. I mean, come on, it's a pirate brig named Amethyst Barracuda. It deserves its own set of adventure novels. We're going to leave our colonial army for a moment though, to let them reorganize and requisition more men and equipment, and we actually have some special gifts coming their way from Europe, but more on that later. In the meantime, it's time for yet another report from other battlefronts around the world, this time from India, where Mughal Empire is dealing with Triple Alliance much more effectively than their Ottoman allies. First, they've managed to push United Provinces out of Goa, and just a few weeks ago they've also eliminated British presence on the subcontinent by taking Calcutta from them. You can see here that the city and the towns around it are still burning, so the fighting must have ended only very recently. That means that India is, for the first time in history I think, united under one banner. Granted, it's a banner of Muslim invaders, but regardless of that, strong Mughal Empire will be an invaluable ally once we decide to go to war against the Allies. First, with their mainland safe, they should be able to boost their economy and train huge numbers of armies and fleets. Second, without fear of constant raiding by East India Company forces, Mughals will probably use all those technologies we traded them to improve their plantations and greatly increase their exports. And that is going to be a perfect opportunity for us. You see, aside from us, all other European nations are fighting Mughals, but they still crave for exotic goods from India. Now, of course, because of the war, Mughal ships cannot really sail into Europe without being pirated into oblivion along the way, so they cannot really sell the goods they're producing. But we are a neutral party. Our ships can sail wherever we want. They can sail to India, stock up on tea and spices, and sail back to Europe to sell these goods for a very, very high profit. We became essentially the main European trading power, the only nation able to bring back prized Indian commodities back home. The world, it seems, is going out of its way to give us even more money. Now, I mentioned a little surprise assembly had for our colonial forces, and so, before continuing their campaign, they've been redirected back to Curacao to unwrap their gifts. You see, a few months earlier, our military engineers in Krakow University have built the very first prototype of a 12-pounder howitzer, a new model of artillery that lobs explosive shells in an arc nullifying cover. But since we cannot really test them in battle in Europe, all the prototypes, 8 of them to be exact, have been sent to Curacao, where they will now join our forces in their war against piracy. Our men are to use these guns as extensively as possible and prepare a detailed report. If those howitzers are really as good as our engineers hype them to be, they will become a standard component in our armies. So, you have a new toy to play with. Can't wait to see what those guns can do. And the chance for a field test came very next month. Lichorobis took his men and sailed towards Antigua, where the last remnants of Brotherhood of the Seven Seas gathered. And even before landing we can see that they are a pitiful and desperate collection. These pirates no longer have even a single ship they could use to prevent our landing, and so we can unload our men and march towards Antigua within just a couple of days, giving pirates no chance to scatter and drag us into prolonged guerrilla war. But that still doesn't mean we should underestimate them. We are heavily outnumbered in this battle, and as we've learned so painfully in Stockholm, the cornered enemy is the one who fights the hardest. So instead of just storming the defences, we're going to try and be smart. Firstly, Horobits sent an offer of surrender, an offer that was refused immediately, so after a bit of thinking our general realized that he doesn't actually need to attack Antigua. Aside from numbers, we are holding all the cards here. We can use Bobrovsky's fleet to supply our men during siege, and we can also simply use our artillery advantage to blast the pirates to hell without risking our men. And so, for the first time in many years, our army is given order to start a siege. But the pirate commander is no fool. Once he realized what we're up to, the highest-ranking captain of the Brotherhood, one Thomas Vane, gathered all his men and prepared for a sally against our troops. And this is actually the wisest decision in this situation. We're still mostly unprepared, but with every passing hour our soldiers will gradually fortify the siege camp. So the pirates have a simple choice here. Try to stop us right now or die once we set up our cannons. It's going to be their final charge. Let's go in and make sure they fail. Our scouts spotted pirate advance late in the afternoon, and once again it's actually a pretty smart move on our enemy's part. Vane must have realized that fighting during sunset gives him an option to retreat should things go badly, because even if we manage to beat this attack, pursuing pirates in the falling darkness would be a suicide. Also, from the look of the sky above the field and the fact there's absolutely no wind, we can guess there's going to be a storm coming very soon, which is yet another advantage for our enemies who are used to Caribbean weather, while our own troops will have to suffer through heat and rapidly increasing humidity. But there is one thing on this particular battlefield that is going to be more beneficial to us than to our enemies. As you might have noticed, this battle is being fought on a geographical/geological phenomenon because, as far as the eye can see, the entire area is completely flat, and while this in itself is fascinating from a geological point of view, all this flat ground will be like a gift for our cavalrymen, who will no doubt have some nice opportunities for uninterrupted charges. The ground itself seems to be helping us, a good omen for this battle. And soon our howitzer crews get their first chance to test out their weapons. Because we deployed our troops far away from enemy positions, it meant that their mortars were out of range, and the thing is, you can't really move mortars in Empire. Once they are deployed, they can only turn left and right, so if they start out of range of any enemy units, they can't really do anything. And so pirate gunners decided that they don't want to be useless in this fight, abandoned their mortars and rushed forward towards our lines, hoping to draw the fire of our artillery, so their comrades could arrive unopposed. But unfortunately for them, we saw through their plan and immediately ordered our guns to focus fire on another full-sized unit, but as you can see, their first volley was an embarrassing miss. It looks like even though we know how to build guns that fire in an arc, actually aiming them is something we still haven't worked out. The second volley is just as inaccurate as the first, but at the very least we've managed to take down 2 pirates with shrapnel, so it wasn't a complete waste. Still, we haven't ferried these guns all the way here from Europe just to shoot enemies one by one, so our artillerymen will have to up their game if they want this test to be successful. While our howitzer crews were trying to figure out a proper way to fire their guns, their pirate counterparts got closer to our lines and for some reason decided that charging towards entrenched infantry will be a good idea. Now, they were smart enough to go through a small forest, but as you can see, nothing good came out of that. And when they saw my officer jumping on top of the trench to shoot them, they just gave up immediately. And then this happened. One mortar crew turned around, raised their swords and rushed, screaming at their following comrade. At first I thought they wanted to betray their friends, but instead they just ran past them towards their main force. But at this point they snapped out of whatever dream they had and ran off. I have no idea what happened there, but this situation is actually very much indicative of the entire battle. For some reason, despite having several advantages here, Pirate Army acted insane through the entire fight. First, they once again went for a line battle, but this time it's even worse idea than in the last fight, because most of our men are in cover of the trenches. Secondly, even though our enemies approached us in a relatively cohesive formation, once they got in range of canister shot, they began walking up and down the line without advancing any further. They were just taking shots from my artillery. And most importantly, instead of using their numbers to overwhelm my positions, they just focused their attention on the single point at the leftmost edge of my formation, where those mortar screws had their little freakout. Now, this is actually a decent idea, because in this part of the field pirates can approach my line and fire at us from the cover of the trees, but nonetheless it gives us an opportunity to use all other units to just flank around them. And now our cavalry will have plenty of chances to attack isolated units and wipe them out one by one. And while I can understand that pirates are not too eager to get into fight and would rather prefer their comrade to do the job, if they won't organize themselves and fight us as an army instead of individual units, their pirate kingdom will be finished before sunset. And because all pirate units focused all their attention on a single point of my line, it gave our howitzer teams a chance to focus their fire on a specific point instead of targeting moving troops around the field. And finally we are starting to score some hits, and when those howitzers do hit, the damage they cause is devastating. You can't really see it here because the grass is obscuring the view, but this single round that dropped right into the middle of enemy formation wiped out around 50 men, and these guys are arranged in a relatively loose formation. So we can just imagine what kind of slaughter these howitzers would cause when firing at tightly packed line infantry or grenadiers. Also, at this point of the battle, enemy commander, Captain Vane, attacked us with his retinue, and you can tell that this battle is going in our favour by the fact that I haven't even noticed that attack until our men have actually dealt with Vane. Even his mounted bodyguards, one of the toughest units in the game, have been all but wiped out without really causing us any harm, and here you can see just how disorganized this pirate army is. While their comrades are dying en masse trying to fight us in that small forest, one unit just stayed back looking completely uninterested. I'd like to say they are protecting the rear of their army, but you've seen their formation. They're just randomly scattered in the street. It seems that even though pirates have united in order to face us, not all of them really want to do so. So, since my infantry line had no trouble dealing with the main enemy assault, I ordered my cavalry to move out and check that dazed unit in the back. And as you can see, it's actually their captain who is the reason they're hanging back, because he's just standing there next to a small house, staring intently into a wall as if he's seeing his dreams and desires there. This is actually pretty scary. Whatever he and his men are seeing there, they clearly failed to notice that one of their comrades, you were able to see him a moment earlier, dropped dead on the spot. Or maybe, considering we're dealing with pirates, they are just drunk out of their minds. Whatever the reason, it means one less enemy unit fighting us, which should make this battle even easier. Soon only a handful of enemies remained on the field, and in a sudden fit of mercy our general decided to, at the very least, give them a chance to surrender. Since this unit was actually running towards our guns, instead of going for the forest where most of their friends died, we've ordered all of our men and gun crews to cease fire, and gave pirates a single opportunity to drop their weapons and give up. But instead of doing that, they just stopped their charge and decided to once again parade across our line, and that was enough to convince General Lichorobius to once again give order to fire. And not only it gave us some more insight into our howitzers, we now know that they have a minimum range, so they can't attack enemies standing too close to them, it also convinced this last unit to retreat, and that was actually the very last unit Brotherhood of Seven Seas had on the field. And that was it. With that unit gone, the entire pirate army is broken, but unfortunately for us, not completely destroyed. As I mentioned at the beginning of this battle, we will not be able to pursue them and finish them off, but as you can see from this forest, covered in dead bodies, we may not even be forced to. Brotherhood's power has been completely broken, so we can give our men some time to rest before the final push to Antigua. Victory in the Caribbean is well within our grasp. So, with that farce of a battle over, we can take stock and count our men, and as we can see here, the Brotherhood was not even able to kill one of our soldiers in exchange for 10 of theirs. But we still have some work to do, because since we were a defending side in this fight, some enemy troops have survived and retreated back into the town and raided for a last stand. But we're going to give our men a few days to rest and patch up the wounded, and we're also going to send a report about performance of our howitzers back into Europe. Unfortunately, the report is classified, so we can't really look into it to see how many kills those guns scored. Yep, that's the reason. It's certainly not because I completely forgot to look at detailed report after the battle. But once we deal with uninteresting but necessary logistical stuff, we're going to push on once again. But as our soldiers approach the pirates' stronghold, they realize that Captain Vane took his men and hid in the streets, so now we're going to be forced into far more dangerous room-to-room encounter, where our enemies will have the advantage. And even though we faced only a fraction of enemy force, we've actually lost more men in this fight than in the last battle. But regardless of that, we have won. The Windward Islands are ours, the Brotherhood of Seven Seas is no more, and we can now officially call ourselves a colonial power. So, it is time to put down the musket and pick up a hammer. Prepare the report, send out patrols to outlying islands. They need to be introduced to Republican laws, and some of them might be slightly unhappy about this, so make sure those patrols are imposing enough. Has the man arrived yet? And go on, bring him in. Good afternoon, Captain Vane. General unpronounceable. Yes, hilarious. I trust you had a pleasant day. Apologies for taking so long, but I had a new island to organize. Drop the pretense, Slav. We both know why I'm here. Let's just get this over with. Of course, of course. We in the Republic are always happy to see the change of heart amongst our enemies, but I have to say, even though we've planned this together, I had not anticipated the effects of this scheme would be so severe. Yes, because you had no idea what your people put in those rum barrels. Damn you, man, I took a single swig in the evening and was barely coherent during battle. Yes, the men reported your rather chaotic attack, but nonetheless I must congratulate you on a job well done. Dragging your entire force couldn't have been an easy task. Shows what you know. Getting those lads to drink is like getting you to breathe. Had to take the barrels away from them in case they drank too much. And my people and yours might have more common than you'd think, Captain. The less I have in common with you, the better, believe me. But enough of this small talk, I'm just here to get paid. You mean you haven't been yet? My quartermaster must be getting old. But worry not, we're going to fix it right up. You there, boy. Take this note to the warehouse on the double. Good lad. Now, as for your second request, the ship you wanted is currently moored in a small bay on the northern side of the island, and your crew is safe and sound, though a bit hungover. This document will guarantee you safe passage through my men. But while you're here, allow me to extend, on behalf of the newly forming trade company I happen to be in charge of, an invitation. You have proven yourself a resourceful man, and we'd gladly take on some experienced sea captains on board. Less exciting than your previous job, of course, but it's going to pay well. Look, little man, you clearly have no idea what kind of people we were in the Brotherhood of Seven Seas. I'd rather screw that flea-infested wig of yours than join your slave ring. You can't take the sea from me, so just give me the damn paper and I'll be off. As you wish. Here. But since you refused an invitation, allow me to extend warning as well. While you have been useful to the Republic, without accepting my offer you remain an outlaw. So while I let you go this time on account of services rendered, should you commit even a single criminal act on our waters ever again, accurate and swift justice will be carried out without hesitation. Am I making myself clear? Crystal. Worry not, Polish, you won't see me again. Too many big fleets around Caribbean lately, so I'll be heading for the East Indies, far, far away from your islands. Now I'll make my excuses because this conversation is making me very uncomfortable on account of your wig. I swear it moved a bit just now. I'd wish you safe journeys, but I'd be lying. Very well. Goodbye, Captain Vane. Ah, poor man. Somebody should tell him we're in East Indies too. But while we were busy overseeing our Caribbean campaign, the Assembly had also been busy with a secret project back in Europe. And now, with word of our victory in the West Indies reaching our homeland, it's time to get to work. And for this particular project, we're not going to need armies, only one man and his retinue. And so, under cover of darkness, General Stanisław Stolarski, commander of the Honor Guard, left his army camp in Lithuania and rode east, with a piece of paper in his pocket and hope for better future in his mind. And as we waited for the news from our Guard General, a rumour reached one of our ports about certain castaway found by a British ship. That castaway was Alexander Selkirk, Scottish sailor who was marooned on an empty island off the coast of Chile after he argued with his captain about conditions aboard the ship. And while Selkirk was a pretty interesting figure, he was an inspiration for Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, This pop-up window pretty much covers everything there is to know about him and his 4-year exile, but there is one far more interesting person mentioned there, a man named Woodes Rogers, who was working on a ship that rescued Selkirk. See, while in this version of history we were the ones who dealt with pirates of the Caribbean, in other universe it was Mr. Rogers who brought them down. After rescuing Selkirk, Rogers and his crew sailed across the Pacific, pirating Spanish ships along the way, and then he sailed all the way to Madagascar, where he used himself as a bait to gather information about pirate-controlled ports across the area. And once he got all the info he needed, he sailed back to England, and by doing so he circumnavigated the globe, by the way, and submitted his report to the king. So the king, impressed by Rogers' report, decided to send him to deal with pirates, but not the pirates of Madagascar, but pirates of Caribbean. And so in 1717 he sailed to Nassau, Bahamas, and as soon as he arrived his ship was bombarded by passing pirate vessel that just burned another ship right inside Nassau's port. Also, the pirate ship was captained by one Charles Vane, perhaps a relative of Thomas we've just met. At any rate, Rogers disembarked and set to work. He offered King his amnesty once, then after some time he offered it for a second time, and once he was sure that every pirate who wanted to surrender had an opportunity to do so, he contracted mercenaries and privateers, and over the next few years he absolutely demolished all pirate presence in the area. He was so effective that his personal maxim, expulsis piratis restituta commercia, piracy expelled, commerce restored, is to this very day the official maxim of Bahamas. So I do wonder what is going to happen to the man now that the pirates are dealt with. Hopefully we will not have to meet him on the field of battle. It is few months later now, and after a long journey from Lithuania, hiding from Poniatowski's patrols along the way, General Stolarski and his men are closing in on their destination. One of the men breaks off from the formation and races towards Moscow, and then past it, towards a small village where our secessionist general and his men made camp after returning from the north. There the man gives Poniatowski a message to meet with Stolarski in a tavern southeast of Moscow. An ominous silence falls for a moment, but then Poniatowski nods in agreement. "Tell your general to come alone or the meeting's off," he says, and then his men escort Stolarski's bannermen away. Few days later, Poniatowski is there, together with his entire staff, and soon one of the men notices Stolarski. He had come alone, but even after realizing that he will be severely outnumbered, he rides on with determination. It is time, he thinks, to end this secession once and for all. "That's close enough, lapdog. Now keep your hands where I can see them, and state your intentions. And be quick about it, I have enough on my head without some fool sent here to arrest me." "Then allow me to offer a surprise, General, because I'm not here to arrest you, though I indeed have arrived on behalf of the Assembly. It was good old President Ulrich who sent me, and he no longer wants to see your head chopped off. Or at the very least that's what he says, but I'm willing to guess he wouldn't be too saddened if you had died. But, as I said, that is not the case here. On Mr. Poleska's behalf, I am here to offer you an amnesty." "An amnesty? And what made our dear President suddenly change his mind about me?" "Peace, General, and people. With the war over, many of our citizens began asking for their hero, and now it's difficult for the Assembly to explain to them why you're still here in Russia. And so, after weeks of deliberation, they decided to give you a second chance." "And where's the catch?" "I feared you'd never ask. Well, the list is quite extensive, though it mostly contains things you're already doing. You will return to Warsaw for a little victory tour, call it a triumph if you like. Then you are to return to Moscow and continue to serve as governor of Russia and perform all the tasks required of your station. You will accept civilian overseers in your office, though the Assembly is willing to give you free rein of your army. Understandable, considering what you did to their officers. And speaking of them, the last condition is this. Each year you are to pay 5,000 crowns to families of the people you have executed." "This is outrageous. This amount of money is enough to outfit an army. And yet you are going to pay it if you want to return home. Think, General. When you killed these men, you told the world they were Swedish spies, and that's what Assembly told the general population. But that made their families outcasts, shunned for their kinsmen's betrayal. Betrayal, mind you, that did not happen. The Assembly were helping them out, but now they decided it's time for you to take responsibility for your actions. Giving these people gold will not bring their relatives or honor back, but it will help them survive, and it will be your atonement. And if I refuse, then the Assembly will tell people the truth, that your tale about our officers being Swedish spies was just that, a tale. You will be branded an enemy of the Republic, and you will either surrender yourself and face trial, or force us into civil war, in which case the entire might of our armies will be mobilized against you. And yes, you don't need to tell me you're the best general we have. We know your army is the most experienced one, and that it will be costly for us to fight you. But while we may not be able to outfight you, we can always simply outproduce you. For every man you will bring into the field, the Assembly will arm and field 10. It may take a while, but you will fall. And when you do, the Assembly will make sure you are erased from the memory of our Republic, which will be bad, so we really hope you will accept. Now it seems I was right all along. It doesn't matter if we took down the king, for we are still no closer to freedom. All that changes now that I have a committee overseeing me instead of a single man. Perhaps the problem, General, lies in the fact that with freedom to do what we want, also comes freedom of taking responsibility for what we've done. But I am done here. You know the terms, and you can either take them or refuse them. I'm going back to the rest of my men. We're staying at the inn on the other side of the forest. I'm going to wait 3 days for your answer. If you won't show up, I'm going to assume you refused. You wouldn't have made it this far if you were not a reasonable man. So I hope we'll meet again soon.